AITA for cutting my stepkids' college funds after they laughed and said they don't need me? The afternoon, everything shattered. I was standing in the kitchen with a check in my hand. $1,700. The enrollment fee for the intensive painting program for Brianna, my 15-year-old stepdaughter. I had been standing there for 20 minutes with the paper between my fingers, listening from the hallway to the conversation that destroyed my life. "No, I do not have a stepdad," Brianna was saying on the phone amidst giggles. "He is the man my mom married. He just lives here." 3 words that weighed more than the tens of thousands of dollars I had spent on her and her brother Jacob. I left the check on the counter and went out to the backyard. I sat on the back steps looking at the gray November sky of Austin, Texas, and for the first time in 7 years, I asked myself what the heck I was doing with my life. But let me go back to the beginning, because this story did not start with that phone call. It started much earlier, when I still believed that love is shown through sacrifice, and that sacrifice is always rewarded. My name is Kevin. I am 46 years old. I grew up in a rough neighborhood in Houston, Texas, in a house where hot water was a luxury and dinner was often just rice and beans. My dad took off when I was 8. My mom raised 3 kids by working as a seamstress, doing alterations from home, sleeping 4 hours a day, never complaining. From that experience, something stuck with me. If I ever have a family, no one is going to feel like they are missing anything. No one. I married young. I got divorced at 32. From that marriage, I had my 2 kids, Natalie, now 11, and Connor, 9. 2 years later, I met Melissa at a book fair in Austin. She had a radiant smile and 2 kids from her first marriage with Eric. Jacob, who was 14 at the time, and Brianna, 12. We got married the following year. I arrived at that wedding with the conviction that those 4 kids were going to be my children. All of them without distinction, and I delivered. Boy, did I deliver. Jacob wanted to play soccer on the high school team. The registration fees, the full uniform, the trips to tournaments in Houston and Oklahoma City. It all came out of my pocket. When he needed a sports nutritionist, I paid for it without hesitation. When they asked for special imported cleats, I bought them even though they cost what I used to earn in a week when I was a kid. Brianna leaned toward the arts. Painting classes at a private studio downtown, materials that cost a fortune, massive canvases that I loaded into the SUV every Saturday to take her to her school exhibitions. I framed her paintings and hung them in the living room with the same pride with which I hung Natalie's drawings on the fridge. I set up 529 college savings plans for all 4 of them. I divided every paycheck into equal parts. When Melissa told me worriedly that Eric, the biological dad, did not contribute a single dollar toward their kids' education, I told her, "Do not worry, I will take care of it." And I took care of it as if my life depended on it, because that is how I felt, but the gratitude never came. Jacob was the first to mark his territory. Since he was 15, every time I asked him to do something simple, to pick up his plate, turn down the music, or respect curfew, he answered me with the same icy phrase, "Wait until my mom says it." He did not yell or throw a tantrum. It was worse. He spoke to me with the calm confidence of someone who had decided that my opinion did not matter, as if I were a piece of furniture offering an opinion. Brianna copied everything her brother did, but she added her own teenage sarcasm that cut much deeper. When I came home from work and asked how school went, she would not even turn around. If I insisted, she would reply with a dry fine without taking her eyes off her phone. At family gatherings, when someone asked about her family, she would say, "My mom, my dad, and my brother." 3 people. I did not exist. I found out through Natalie, my own daughter, that at school Jacob had told a classmate, "That man is not my dad or anything to me. He just pays for things." Natalie came home with red eyes. "Daddy, why does Jake say you are not his family?" That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I was 44 years old. I worked as a civil engineer for more than 10 hours a day, and I was crying in a bathroom because a teenager had erased me from his life with one sentence. Melissa intervened sometimes. She would tell Jacob to respect me. She would ask Brianna to be nicer, but it was always reactive, always after the damage was done. And the kids knew exactly how far they could push things before their mom said something. It was a game, and I was the permanent loser. The worst part was what this was teaching Natalie and Connor. My 9-year-old son asked me one day, "Hey, Dad, if Jake ignores you, Why do I have to obey you? I froze. I could not find an answer. What do you tell a child? That blood determines respect? That unconditional love sometimes turns you into someone taken for granted? There was a moment, a few months before the breaking point, that I should have taken as the final warning. It was Jacob's birthday. I organized a barbecue at the house. I invited his friends. I bought an Xbox Series X that I had been searching for weeks because it was sold out in all the stores in Austin. I found it at an online store in Houston and paid for express shipping so it would arrive on time. I wrapped the box myself and put a huge bow on it. When Jacob opened it in front of his friends, his face lit up. He screamed with excitement. But when one of his buddies asked who gave it to him, Jacob answered without hesitation, "My mom." I was standing just a few feet away with the grill tongs in my hand, the smell of charcoal on my clothes, and the kid did not even look my way. Melissa, who heard everything, gave me an apologetic look from the kitchen door, but she said nothing. No one said anything. And I kept grilling the burgers as if nothing had happened, because that is what I did. I swallowed it and kept going. At night, when the house was silent, I would sit on the living room couch with the television off. I thought about my mom, how she never received recognition from anyone, and yet she kept going. But I also thought about something she told me once, shortly before she died. "My son, giving without measure is fine, but giving without dignity destroys you." I did not understand those words until I experienced them firsthand. My work started to suffer. I am a civil engineer. I supervise construction sites throughout Central Texas. It is a job that requires a clear head, concentration, and authority. But I would show up to meetings with my mind somewhere else, replaying every slight like a broken record. One day, I almost approved a poorly done structural calculation because I was distracted by the last rude thing Brianna had said about me. My partner pulled me aside and said, "Buddy, what's wrong with you? Are you in another world?" I did not tell him. How do you explain to someone that you are falling apart inside because two teenagers who are not even yours are tearing you to pieces? I also started noticing that Jacob came back from weekends with his dad Eric with an even worse attitude. He would arrive telling stories of how Eric took him to FC Dallas games, how they went out for chicken wings and had an incredible time, always with that tone of comparison, as if saying, "My real dad actually knows how to have fun. You just pay." And Brianna fed off of that. She would add comments like, "It is just that with my dad it is different. He is more laid back. He is not all about the rules." Of course he was more laid back. Eric did not pay a dime. It is easy to be the cool dad when someone else carries all the financial responsibility. One night, Natalie found me sitting on the back steps. She sat next to me without saying a word, rested her head on my arm, and said, "Daddy, I do know you do a lot for everyone. I do see you." Those words from an 11-year-old girl held me up more than any adult could imagine, but they also made me realize something terrible. My daughter was absorbing my pain. She was learning that being good meant suffering in silence, and I could not allow that. The real trigger came on a Saturday afternoon. Connor had a drone that he had bought with months of savings, allowance, birthday gifts, and coins he had collected in a piggy bank. That drone was his treasure. He would fly it in the park near the house, getting better each time and shouting with excitement when he mastered a new stunt. I got back from the grocery store and found him devastated in the backyard. My son was sitting on the ground with the broken pieces of the device in his trembling hands. Jacob had taken it to test it out and had deliberately smashed it against the sidewalk. Connor had seen it happen. Jacob had laughed. I went inside to find him. He was lying on the living room couch looking at his phone as if nothing had happened. "Jacob, you broke something that was not yours. You are going to apologize to Connor, and you are going to replace that drone." He did not even look up. When he finally looked at me, he had that familiar smug smirk that turned my stomach. "And if I do not, then what? You are nobody to me. You cannot force me to do anything. You are nobody to me." Something broke inside me right then, not with a loud crash, but with a quiet final click, like a door closing for the last time. I felt a part of me shut off, the part that had spent years begging for acceptance. The part that believed if I just gave enough, eventually they would see me. Eventually they would love me. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I sat at the dining room table with the bank statements and a notebook. The silence in the house was absolute. Only the kitchen clock could be heard ticking. I started adding up registration fees, equipment, art supplies, trips, private tutoring, clothes, food, and college savings contributions. In 7 years, I had invested enough in Jacob and Brianna to make a substantial down payment on a house, all paid for by the man who just lives here. I closed the notebook and made the hardest decision of my life. The next day, a Monday, I called the bank and canceled the contributions to Jacob and Brianna's 529 college savings plans. I withdrew what was legally mine. I canceled the automatic payments for their activities. I called the soccer coach and explained that starting that month, any fees had to be handled with Eric, the biological father, or with Melissa. I did the same with Brianna's art studio. When Melissa found out, it was as if I had thrown a bucket of ice water on her. At first, she did not understand. Then she exploded. Are you crazy? How can you do this to them? They are children, Kevin. They are growing up. You cannot punish them like this. I did not raise my voice. I had spent years raising it inside and swallowing it. Not anymore. I am not punishing them. I am simply giving them what they asked for. If I am a nobody, then a nobody does not pay for their activities, does not cover their fees, and does not load canvases into the SUV every Saturday. Let their real parents take care of it. Melissa cried. She accused me of being vindictive and breaking the family apart. I replied that the family had already been broken the day her kids decided I did not exist, and she did nothing to stop it. That very same night, Eric showed up. I had not seen him in months. He arrived at the house looking hostile, as if he had the moral authority to demand something. He stood in the living room, pointed a finger at me, and said, "You cannot just leave them stranded like this. You committed to them when you married Melissa." I looked him straight in the eye. "And you committed to them when they were born, did you not? Where have you been for the last 7 years? How much have you contributed for their school, their activities, or their food?" He stayed quiet because the answer was nothing. Eric had not contributed a single dollar in years. "If your kids insist that I am a nobody," I told him, "then you are the only somebody they have left. Welcome to responsibility." The house turned into a silent battlefield. Melissa spoke to me in monosyllables. Jacob and Brianna avoided me, but no longer with disdain. Now it was mixed with fear. For the first time, the consequences of their words had taken on a real, concrete form. Jacob found out that his soccer season was at risk because no one had paid the fee. The coach sent him a message asking if he was going to stay on the team. Brianna discovered that her painting classes had been canceled when she arrived at the studio, and the instructor told her the payment for the month had not been received. The college funds they had taken for granted had disappeared. I saw something in their faces I had never seen before: uncertainty. The world they had built on the foundation of my invisible effort was cracking, and for the first time, they had no one to blame but themselves. Jacob asked Eric to pay for the team registration. Eric told him he did not have the cash right now and to wait. Brianna begged Melissa to talk to me, to convince me. Melissa tried, but I repeated the same thing to her: let them talk to their real parents. There was one particularly difficult night. I was alone in the kitchen making a cup of coffee at 11 o'clock at night when I heard Jacob talking on the phone in his room. The door was slightly open. He was telling a friend, "No, man, things got really serious. Kevin cut everything off. My mom is going crazy and my dad says he does not have the money to pay." There was a pause. Then, "Well, yeah, we really messed up, didn't we?" That sentence, said without knowing I was listening, meant more than any formal apology ever could, because it was the first time Jacob admitted, even privately, that they had caused this situation. Natalie and Connor, on the other hand, stuck to me like never before. Connor hugged me more often. Natalie left little notes on my desk that said, "I love you, Daddy." They understood before anyone else what was happening. Their father had finally stopped allowing himself to be taken for granted. The weeks passed slowly, as if time wanted everyone to fully absorb their part in what had happened. Melissa started softening. Not all at once. First, she stopped yelling at me. Then she started observing. She saw how Natalie and Connor felt safer. She saw how the house had a different atmosphere, calmer and fairer. She saw her own children facing the weight of their decisions for the first time. Jacob was the first to break. One night he knocked on my study door. He stood there for a while, as if the words were heavy. "Kevin, can I ask you something?" I nodded. He walked in, sat down, and in the smallest voice I had ever heard from him, he said, "How do you manage not to give up when you feel like everyone is turning their back on you?" It was not an apology, but it was something deeper. It was the first time he saw me as a human being, not as a walking ATM. I told him about my dad, the one who left when I was 8. I told him about my mom, working on alterations at 3 in the morning. I told him that respect is neither inherited nor demanded. It is built every day through the decisions we make, and that words have real consequences. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stood up, and before leaving he said, "Thanks." It was the first time he had said that word to me in 7 years. Brianna took longer. It happened in the car on the way back from downtown when she suddenly blurted out, "I did not realize everything you did until you stopped doing it. I thought things just happened, that the money just appeared on its own." I did not lecture her. I simply said, "It is easy not to see the foundation when the house is still standing, but without it, everything falls down." She stayed quiet the rest of the way, but I could feel something had shifted inside her. Eric, and this surprised me the most, came to the house a few weeks later alone, with no yelling. He sat in the living room and said something I never expected to hear from him. "They have to learn that things cost money." I did not teach them that. "You did, even if it hurt." Coming from him, those words meant more than any apology. Melissa and I started to rebuild. It was not easy or quick. There were nights of heavy silence and conversations that felt like walking on thin glass. But one night in the darkness of our bedroom, she told me something that gave me back a piece of what I had lost. "You were not against my kids. You were fighting for this family to actually work." It took me a while to see it, but now I do. The house changed. It did not become perfect. Real families never are. Jacob started greeting me when he came home and asking if I needed help with anything. Brianna stopped referring to me as "that man" and began calling me by my name, which for me was already a huge step forward. Natalie and Connor stopped secretly asking me why nobody respected me. The tension slowly faded like morning fog. I restored the college savings plans, but with clear conditions. Jacob and Brianna had to make a personal commitment, not a legal one, but an emotional one, to keep their grades up, respect the house rules, and understand that my support was not an obligation. It was a choice. The moment they decided again that I was a nobody, then nobody was exactly what they would get. Sometimes at night, I sit on the same back steps where I sat that November afternoon. I look at the same gray Austin sky, but I no longer ask myself what I am doing with my life. Now I know. I am building something worthwhile, not perfect, not a fairy tale, but something real. A family where respect is non-negotiable, where love has healthy boundaries, and where no one is invisible. Because I learned something I wish I had known sooner. Sometimes loving your family means letting the storm come, letting them feel the cold, not out of revenge, but so they learn to value the roof that someone else built for them. And that lesson, even though it hurt, was the best one I could give to all 4 of them. Comment. Watching this story really made me reflect on how important self-respect is in every relationship. I have learned that setting healthy boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for a real connection. True kindness means giving from the heart without expecting anything in return, but it also means protecting your own peace. Taking responsibility for our words and actions can change everything in a family. Sometimes, stepping back allows others to see the value of what they once took for granted. Healing starts when we choose to stop accepting disrespect, even from those we love. I hope this encourages you to think about the relationships in your own life and where you might need to draw a line. Choosing peace does not mean giving up. It means building something stronger and more honest. You deserve to be seen and valued just as much as you give to others. Thanks for joining me today. I am always grateful when we can learn and grow together through these stories. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.